Congratulations to all participants. The topic of our research work, Indicators Improvement of Territories Spatial Development. The main technical planning document is the Comprehensive Spatial Development Plan. Also, the calculation of the normative monetary valuation of land, which affects the amount of rent, and the calculation of land tax, will be carried out in the future on the territory of territorial communities. Take a look at the display. Fragment of the Plan of Land Distribution by Categories. Owners and users in the Pisachin Territorial Community of Kharkiv Region Pilot Project UZ Program on Agrarian and Rural Development Agro and Boundaries of Territorial Communities of Ukraine. There are projects that will use the territorial community as a unit for conducting land management works, inventory of land and natural resources during the planning of territorial communities' spatial development. Indicators of land resources use should be objective. The indicators need some improvement based on the characteristics of the territory organization. When planning the use of land resources, there are many project options, and which option to apply depends on the calculated indicators, which should comprehensively characterize economic activity. Currently, such indicators of land resources take a look at this slide, but the use of these indicators has both positive and negative impacts. The positives include the fact that these indicators are intuitive and can be easily compared. The negatives include the fact that all indicators do not take into account the spatial placement of objects, but only fix their ratio. It should be noted that indices that characterize the spatial relationship of land exist. Take a look at this. But all these indices are more related to the study of landscapes and to a lesser extent to agricultural activities. They also have their positive and negative sides of application. Indices of spatial development are evolved for many programs in different countries of the world: Poland, Spain, Taiwan, Norway, etc. Scientists investigated the possibility of using stability indicators to determine and measure the quantitative and qualitative spatial stability of territories. Economic activity is a complex ecological and economic process, and therefore we suppose it appropriate to consider the use of more complex indicators. The indicators, indices, and coefficients listed above are displayed as real numbers. For example, complex numbers that can more deeply describe various factors of planning or designing the land resources use. It is rather difficult to directly compare environmental and economic indicators. As a rule, ecological indicators are converted into economic indicators by calculating the amount of funds necessary to prevent the manifestation of negative natural and anthropogenic phenomena. Therefore, we suggest using the ratio of arable land to the entire area as an ecological indicator. As a technical indicator that affects economic costs, usage the ratio of the area of arable land contours to the perimeter. This indicator takes into account the spatial location of agricultural production various objects. We suggest making calculations in complex numbers, which will make it possible to combine various aspects of economic activity. The economic efficiency of economic activity depends on various costs, one of which is the fuel and oil cost and agricultural machinery depreciation. This is due to those idle runs and turns of agricultural machinery. Take a look at the presentation. Spatial indicators of forecasting the use of land resources are in the fact that there are dependencies on the shape of fields and working areas and various economic effect. Take a look at the presentation. We see schematic views of the arable land configuration with ecologically stabilizing lands. Yellow color shows conditionally arable land, green shows ecologically stabilizing land, purple shows positive impact on arable land. By positive influence we mean anti-erosion protection, creation of microclimatic conditions for the growth of agricultural crops, etc. All three schematic options have the same land ratio. Plowability is. Regarding the ease of working areas, use option A is better, option B is somewhat worse. Option C is not suitable for the use of powerful agricultural machinery at all. Regarding the impact on arable land, Option C provides the best impact due to the mosaic structure of the territory. Option A has the minimum influence area. On the one hand, the high contour and fragmentation of the territory creates biological diversity, provides greater protection against wind and water erosion, and provides a stronger interaction between ecologically stabilizing lands and intensively used lands. On the other hand, high contouring worsens the use of agricultural machinery due to idle turns, increases the costs of fuel and oil and work time amortization et. Take a look at the display. To calculate the reference complex indicator, the recommendations of the Держкомзем State Committee of Ukraine on Land Resources were used regarding the ecological and economic substantiation of land management and the introduction of crop rotation. These recommendations suggest that the shape of the field be rectangular or trapezoidal, have parallel sides, an aspect ratio of 2, and be located, if possible, from north to south with long sides. The area of the field should be up to hectares. Field protection forest strips should be located along the boundaries of the working plots. Entrances to each land plot should be provided. Field protection forest strips should be located at an angle of degrees in relation to harmful winds with a deviation of up to degrees. With the help of the software, a reference project was designed and the sum of perimeter and area ratio was determined. The considered perfect conditions do not take into account the relief variegation of the ground cover et. For the calculation, we used an area of hectares with a plowing rate of. In scientific sources, researchers have come to a consensus that the rate of plowing is too high for Ukraine and should be reduced. But there is no agreed exact data on the size of the plowability indicator. Take a look at the presentation. Next, using our example, we calculate how much the complex number of the reference project differs from the corresponding options. We make a general conclusion which option is the best. For option A, the comprehensive assessment was I for B, I for C, I for the reference project. Next, we find the distance between the points, the length of the corresponding vector. Consequently, we can say that the closest to the standard and recommended option is B. Difficulties and issues that need to be refined regarding complex indicators using complex numbers as opposed to real numbers makes comparisons difficult. We can compare only the real and imaginary parts. To avoid this problem, we suggest developing a reference assessment object. That is, a project that will take into account all existing recommendations from the ecological and economic side. When evaluating project options or different projects for the offered indicator, we will compare them with the evaluation of the reference object. How far is our indicator from this point? The offered evaluation of design and planning solutions index will make it possible to evaluate both the ratio of lands and their spatial placement in an integrated manner. The use of complex numbers will make it possible to implement new analysis approaches in land management to find regularities in the influence of spatial placement on the economic activity results. For territorial communities, an important success factor is the use of arable land as the most effective agricultural land. Finding a balance between economic benefit and ecological stability is a key task of the territory spatial planning. The offered approach application requires a significant amount of relevant information. Unfortunately, there are certain obstacles regarding access to the characteristics of the land resources used. Modern software and land remote sensing data allow highly complex analysis. Thank you.